First of all, I'd like to quickly introduce you to Liz Burns. Liz is the County Wexford Arts Officer for Wexford County Council. And this event is supported by Wexford County Council. And we're most grateful to all the support that Wexford County Council gives us in terms of our office and many other support. So it's an absolute joy working with Liz, and we're delighted. And we also, just while I'm thanking our supporters, I'd like to acknowledge the Arts Council who support Isaacs all year round. And without that support, we wouldn't exist. It's just vital. So without further ado, Liz, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thanks, Lucy. Okay, can you all hear me? Great. Just wanted to say hello and welcome to everyone, and thanks, Lucy, for organising this great event, and particularly like to welcome Vida here today from Slovenia for this seminar, Why Don't We Do It in the Road? And I guess it's I'm thinking at a time like this, it's particularly interesting at a time when everything is being severely curtailed in terms of how artists present work. It's nice and refreshing to have a title like Why Don't We Do It in the Road? I think it brings up a lot of issues and a lot of great stuff. And in terms of the role of an arts officer, our job is to support artists in all these art forms. And street art is a particularly vibrant art form for presenting outdoors, in the road, or in many contexts. But also our role is to support public engagement with the arts. And we all know it's an exciting opportunity in terms of how to present in the public realm. It's of great interest to me how art can be presented in many forms, not just in art centres, but outside of traditional contexts. It's really exciting in terms of audience engagement as well, and how we engage with audience. It's another particular role of an arts office. And indeed the Arts Council as well, in terms of art and supporting artists to engage with different types of audiences. But there's also loads of opportunities, but there's also loads of challenges in this, as we all know. So it's great and refreshing to be having this chat at this time and exploring new ways to present work in the public realm, which can mean so many things. This is a virtual public format as well, which is also wonderful and has its opportunities for people to talk and present. So thank you, everyone, and I hope we have a great discussion here today, and I hope it inspires people and the conversations will continue, and through the great work of Lucy and the team in Isaacs. And I'm delighted and looking forward to hearing the conversation from Vida. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz, and that's brilliant. Thank you for that. So just to set a little bit of the context, in Ireland, street arts really kind of became a form in the 1980s, and it arose out of the community arts movement, really, which would have been a big thing in the 80s, a kind of a whole wave of kind of new way of thinking about who art was for, where it should take place, what it should look like, who it should engage. And one of the forerunners in that would have been the Sligo Community Arts Group, which subsequently turned into Bacchanal, led by Killian Rogers and Imelda Peppard. And they did amazing work and still do amazing work over those few decades. So there would have been many other organizations that would have turned to street arts as a way for getting outside of the kind of the walls and the barriers of many of our sort of more formal institutions. And that would have come a lot from that community arts place of wanting to engage all, and also from a place of activism and wanting to kind of, you know, challenge and change the way the world works. So it's always been a kind of a form that kind of has taken place on the edges of things and challenged and pushed the boundaries, I suppose. So it's very exciting to hear from Vida about her perspective on where street arts is and how it can go forward now, in particular in this time. So I shall, without any more ado, introduce you to Vida Kirkvanick-Bren. She is the Artistic Director of Youth, based in Slovenia, and we're delighted to host you. So over to you, Vida.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope you all hear me well. So thank you, Lucy, very much for this invitation, and thank to all of you for the time and for the attention. I'm very happy to speak to such a numerous and diverse audience about a topic that is so dear to me, which is street arts. So first of all, let me check a little bit where are you coming from? So I would ask you all, if you do street arts, if you are doing street arts, please can you wave into your camera? So I see, ooh, a lot. Please keep waving. I have to scroll to other people. There's so many of you. Okay, I see some faces I know. Grega, hello. Okay, and some people don't have the camera on. So definitely more than half of the people, but still there are some people in the room that are not. Thank you very much. You can stop waving now. Thank you. Although it looks lovely. Okay, my background also is not actually in street arts. I studied classical drama theater directing at the Academy in Ljubljana, and afterwards I was directing in the institutions for a while. And then I decided to hit the road with a group of friends. And for 10 years, I've been really constantly traveling and doing all sorts of projects on the street, in the squares, in the parks, but also in the halls of hospitals, on the tops of the mountains, in the forests, in the buses, in all sorts of places that are not meant for art purposes as they are. So I apologize also my English, it's obviously not my mother tongue, so but I've learned something in these years of traveling around Europe and also other places like South Korea, Iran, Belarus. We've been in Australia, so we've been working really all around the globe. And during these 10 years of traveling, I've met a lot of like-minded artists that intuitionally felt that their place is not in the institutions, but in real life with the people. And I learned a thing or two from them. So the book that I have written, with the title, Why Don't We Do It on the Road? That is full of secondhand knowledge, so that I wanted to share with everybody. And secondly, also in the book, I tried to articulate some values and principles that I believe are embedded in the street arts and that are also crucial nowadays in the climate and the ecological emergency, in the globalized multicultural world that we live in, and even more with the COVID-19 and its consequences. So I don't know how it is in Ireland, but in Slovenia, street art is not so established, not completely established, let's say. Just recently, I ran into an old professor of mine from the academy. And of course, he said, oh, Vida, where are you? It's such a pity, it's such a shame. You've been such a talented young director, because I managed to win a few national prizes after finishing school. And I think I was the youngest director ever invited to direct at the big stage of the National Theatre in Ljubljana. But you see, I don't blame him. I mean, the street art is such a new and fresh art form that a lot of people like my professor weren't able to experience it in its full richness and potential yet, and they don't really know what is it all about. So it's also partly why I decided to write this book. And let me now walk you through a few illustrations from the book to see what, for me, street art is about. I will try to share my screen now. Okay. Lucy, can you please allow me to share my screen? Okay, let's try again. Okay, yes. Yes, this is working. Hopefully. Okay. Share. Yes. Good. Good. If it's good, thumbs up. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. I like to have a little bit of feedback. So let me introduce you first to two characters from my book, and it's the square and the circle. And they stand, in the book, they stand for two different ways of perceiving the world. So the first way, the square, is through passive observation from a safe distance, analyzing it and trying to comprehend it. And the second is through active participation. So the circle, through direct engagement, which includes also physical experience. So by letting go and becoming a part of it, becoming a part of this world. And one of the key concepts of the dramatic classical theater is the sensory isolation. So you can see on your left, spectators sit in the darkness in a house that is in a building that is soundproof, in order that the artists have as much as possible control over their experience over what is happening on the stage. While on the other hand, if you look at your right, in the street theater, on the contrary, the public space is chaotic, full of noise, full of people, or maybe in some other time of the day, it's totally empty and quiet. So you can almost hear the leaf falling from a tree. Or maybe it's raining, or basically you never know. So that's why street artists are very used to deal with uncertainty, to work with what we've got. It's kind of motto, work with what you've got, that we like to use. And street performers has become masters of dealing with the uncertainty, of juggling with the diverse elements of everyday city life, turning them into street poetry as they go along. So you might have guessed that this, for me, is not a place where street theater happens. I'm not fond of putting frames into the public space so that art can happen inside of these frames. On the contrary, I'm interested in artists like Willy Dorner and his urban bodies in urban space, who bend, tweak, and mash up the system, play with the system to reinvent public space and ways of living together. This is Adrian Schwartzstein, for example. He's a real master of playing with the traffic and the rules and the people in public space, improvising like crazy. You see how I've put in a lot of examples just to widen your perspective. This is Veronika Tsekova. And of course, space is also people. So there is a lot of socially engaged projects happening in the neighborhoods, in public spaces, in between blocks of apartments and everywhere. Artists are taking into account people's needs, opinions, juggling with their problems as well. And a more classical way, this is Theater Fragile. They're doing quite classical street theater work, but always engaging the audience and taking them in. So artists who erase the boundaries between the spectators and the artists and bringing the audience at the heart of their creations is what I find interesting. Okay, so let me see you again for a moment. Okay, so to whom of you losing control sounds scary? You can wave again. Yes, to all of us, of course, it is a scary thing. And also at first, when I went to work outdoor from the indoor, it felt like coming from a laboratory into a jungle. And when I now work with institutional actors and institutional singers and musicians, when I see them, how they somehow stiffen up when they're asked to interact or to go closer to the audience, or even when they're just confronted with the weather uncertainty, I understand them. And I know it's not knowing what will happen is scary to us, because we learned to always know where we are heading and what is our goal that we are pursuing. And being without a plan, just being, or even without the need of having a plan, is nothing less but a cultural shock to us. But the good news is that improvisation and interaction are skills that can be learned, I think also much quickly and more efficiently than a lot of people can imagine. So we are back. Just a second. I have to find my presentation again. Where is it? I think I've lost it for a second. Sorry, I'll have to reopen my presentation because somehow it's gone. Okay, here it is. Wonderful. Okay, so going from laboratory into the jungle, the first thing that I had to learn was to have an empty head. So to free myself of the expectations and assumptions, to be in the moment, to not worry about the future and not having regrets about the past. Which is, I believe, this ability of being mindful and present in the moment lies in the very heart of street art and philosophy. And it's often, I mean, it's also generally very useful skill to have, because it's accompanied by a feeling of inner relief and a gratitude and how to say, amazement. It allows for spontaneous playfulness to be awakened. Okay, so to go back again to the classical theater, in the classical theater setting, the artistic content is being transferred or is being presented to the audience, while in the street theater content is being communicated in between many diverse groups. So going from presentation to interaction to communication and to participation. Now, interaction is a starting point of a lot of street acts, because street artists don't operate inside of art venues. Of course, therefore, they must often first negotiate the temporary usage of a square, a park, or a building, or a facade of a building for their artistic purposes. And how do they do this? I mean, how do we do this? Obviously, we talk to the people, we talk to our audiences, meaning that we know our audience. They are not just anonymously sitting in the darkness, but they are people with faces, and they are to a different degree engaged into the experience, into the process, artistic process, into the experience that we artists are facilitating for them and ourselves to be part of. So you see, there is some kind of shift of perception. And then some of the people are always closer to the core of the action or the artistic process going on, and some, like many coincidental bypassers, stay more on the edge. But the communication scene or situation, as you see on the target diagram on your right, is much more complex than in the case of classic dramatic theater. To drift away from the theater, so here is Frank Bolter, a German artist, a friend of mine, building a giant origami paper boat. He just went on a square and asked people to help him with his huge paper. So as you can see, there is participants that stayed with him and that are more in the core of what is happening. And then you have a huge audience of bypassers, of people watching Frank going into the water with his boat and also sinking, unfortunately. And to go to another example, just to somehow help you to understand what I'm talking about, not to be too academic. This is a Oscar-nominated movie. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, Faces, Places, from Agnes Varda and the GR. So they are traveling around the French countryside and meeting people and taking photos of them and sticking these photos on their houses and other places. This is, for example, photos of miners that used to live in this house that's going to be torn apart. And here we have a postman in a French village and much more. So they're making friends with the people that they meet and listen to their stories, and by this turning them into their artistic partners rather than being just consumers of their artworks. And of course, then there is bypassers and tourists later on coming to see the graffitis on the wall that are more on the edge of the target diagram that I showed you before. So interactive street, obviously interactive street theater does not create the optional circumstances for presenting complex narratives or for identification with the characters on stage to take place, but it provides the participants with the opportunity of being part of something spontaneous and real. When we are attending a street theater act, if we go back to the theater, we are not, you are not only longer a voyeur sitting comfortably in the darkness, but you move to the center of the development. You are physically present, moving in the same space as the performance, and sometimes quite literally surrounded by the performers. So also surrounded by other spectators that become part of the performance. I would now share a few photos of a performance that we did, Lute Collective. This was somehow the first bigger project that we went touring on the road with, Pink Aliens. And you will see on these photos how the Pink Aliens, they came and they tried to integrate into our societies as immigrants from outer space. But the most interesting part of this performance are actually not the Pink Aliens, but the people, the reactions of the people. And the audience came to see not only the aliens, but to see other spectators react on what the aliens were doing, violating the rules of behavior in public space. So you see the reactions of the people, aliens coming very close to them. Oh, this is Duchamp. So to jump a little bit, no? I believe that by putting art right in the middle of life, and by putting the spectator right in the center of that art, street art or live art has managed to integrate all of the basic concepts and ideas of the 20th century art. So this is Duchamp's urinal that has been put into a gallery, as a lot of you might know. This happened 103 years ago. So already there, the need to reinvent, to reinvestigate traditional forms of art has been looming on the horizon for a long time. And I believe that street art has managed to incorporate the ideas of the 20th century art much better than institutional art did. So ideas like everything can be art, or everybody is an artist, or many others like art can happen everywhere, and also shock is a potential valid means of artwork, surprise or shock. So here we also see the living theater, yeah, in the 60s. So the 20th century art made it very, very clear that the traditional art forms and frames are limited and out of date. And street art obviously operates very much outside of these frames, and is also not trapped in the ideas of the 20th century art, into endless discussion, into this dead end of endless discussions of what art is or what art is not or should be. But street art managed to move on, and experiment with formats and reinventing what art is. So let me tell you another story about my professors from the academy. When I started to work on the street, another professor would come to me and he would say, "But Vida, what you're doing is not theater. This is not theater." And I said, "Well, okay, then it's something else. I don't know, you give it a name. I find it very worthwhile to do it, and it's a lot of fun." So let me now share a few videos with you.
Vida,
Yes.
I think you have to stop sharing and then open a new share of the video.
Oh, so now it's not working now?
No, just do stop share and then open your video.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for this. So I stopped sharing and now I will
Share again.
Okay.
I think, am I telling her the right thing? Am I telling her the right thing?
Okay, is this
Yeah.
working? Everybody see? Okay, cool. So this this is a video from Dries Verhoeven that I met him just recently, and I would just like to share it with you to just gives you the feeling of the variety of the street art, because of course street art is very good in keeping us hopeful, adding some colors to our streets, or reminding us of the neglected values of the everyday life. But street art can as well talk about darker subjects. Okay, hope I didn't depress you too much. but yeah, just to show, so an art piece reminding us on some important concepts of our own mortality. There was a transparent box put into a public space that was opening and closing at the certain times, just for a short time, and people would come to see what is inside. Now I will find another video clip to show you. So this is a video from a totally different way how I got it. Actually, my partner shared it with me on the WhatsApp just to cheer me up while I was preparing for this speech. Okay, so let me maybe say a few words about this video. I mean, what is also an interesting aspect of street arts to me is that to get it, to experience it, you don't even have to know that it's art. And so I don't know what you're looking at now. Okay, you see me again? Okay, very good. So because my partner, Zoran is his name, he is totally not an art lover. He thinks that art is very boring, or at least not for him. And he's not a lonely case, unfortunately. He's also totally surprised that anybody, including his wife, can be paid for doing such a useless thing as art. But he has sent me this video, and then I asked him if this is art, and he said no, of course not. And I asked him why this is not art, and he said, well, because it's funny. So obviously he's been taught in his primary school that art is a serious thing, and it's not funny. And then I asked him, okay, it's funny, why it's funny? And he said, well, this is totally obvious why it's funny, because you are hearing a sound coming out of the garage, and you expect a kind of big Harley Davidson or a car or a kind of monster coming out, and then you realize it was the sound of a trumpet, and it plays with your expectations. And I digged even more in him, and he said, well, of course, for a moment it gives you this unstable feeling of what is real and what is not real, because we are very certain that we know what reality is, and now seeing a small street intervention like this with the trumpet catches us in being wrong. So we might start thinking, what if our sensory perception is not all there is to it? What if we don't get it right? What if life is nothing but a dream? As the title of a famous play from the 17th century by Cardelon de la Barca. So same old concept, but packed into a contemporary language in a street art intervention, very accessible for everybody. So it turns out that, on the contrary, knowing something is art might even nowadays block you from reacting spontaneously, and from just being amazed over beauty, or astonished over a skill, or touched by simple human contact, unburdened by conceptual thinking about what art is or is not, or should be or shouldn't be, or how one should act around it. And street art has this wonderful opportunity to catch people by surprise, and beside this, let me share the last video. Okay, I'm going to be a pro at the end of Okay. So this was Dominos by Station House Opera. A very, very simple project. The simplest idea of all. A lot of people were engaged in it. I've seen it in many different cities. And this path of Dominos was not made by a single artist or artistic group, but a lot of citizens, so a lot of volunteers were working on it for a whole week. And also then, of course, their friends and the relatives and came to see. A lot of them were not aware or were not thinking whether this is art or not, but they were just enjoying the process of doing something together, and then, like any Buddhist mandala, breaking it apart in less than half an hour. Well, such a simple and but deep underlying message. So how we are with time?
We're running out of time. We're down to our last. So I want to leave some time for people to talk, to ask you a few questions. So if you can wrap up quickly.
Okay, I'll wrap up quickly. Well, basically what I wanted to share is that street art has a set of values. Let me wrap up the set of values that I think is embedded in the street art. So street art or live art, if you want to call it, cultivates dialogue, is in dialogue with the space and with the people, with its audience, and is nurturing the virtue of listening. So in this sense, it's very democratic. And street art is happening here and now and reminds us of being mindful and present in the moment, and promotes active engagement by sharing responsibility for the final outcome with the audience, and is inclusive very much, because sometimes often it acts like some kind of Trojan horse, bringing art to people without them knowing it and bringing it literally to their doorsteps. It's process orientated, and it brings art back to life where it should be, by letting go control, letting go perfectionism, letting go the idea that things must stay the same way, being preserved in time and kept in a museum, by overcoming the illusion of separateness and realizing how interconnected everything is, and by realizing that art is not somewhere there on the other side of the frame, but it's here all around us, and we are a part of it.
Super, thank you, Vida. That's been absolutely fascinating. What a journey. So now if anybody has anything they want to ask Vida, this is your moment, or if you've some burning question that you want to get off your chest. Do I see you, Debbie? Have you your hand up? No? Oh, okay. I just thought they... Oh, okay. There's quite a few comments in the box here, Vida. Joe Hancock saying humor is a great access point, then you can choose how you take it further. So, and Stephen Olendi also talking about whether are we preaching to the choir, or is humor the way to connect? I don't know if either of you want to say anything on those topics. Joe or Stephen?
Joe wants to say something, but he's muted. We don't hear.
Hello, everybody. Just to sort of further on that point, but yeah, humor is a great way to welcome people in, and often if you can get them initially by laughing, then you can actually take them to some quite deep places. And I'd also advocate the use of promenade, of moving people. That there's really something interesting that happens when you get people to engage in the same actions physically, and it takes them sort of psychologically and emotionally somewhere else with you.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal how you can connect with people in this way outside of the barriers, and removing the kind of the barriers to art being. It's so funny, your little video of the guy on the motorbike with the trumpet. I mean, I think your husband's comments really kind of encapsulate that there's this perception that art has to be all serious and intellectual, and you know, what is wrong with being funny? I really, it's a great way for, it's a great connector. And it can be deeply moving. Like when you think about the medieval fools and stuff, they said the most challenging things through humor. Stephen, I can see you're bursting to say something.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons I said that was I've been aware of the idea that galleries and museums are thought by some to be not for us, and therefore to actually get people into the headspace where they do think, yes, art is something that like should be universal and should be something that does talk to me. You need that coup point, that awakening point, and humor, especially like what you just showed there with the trombone on the back of the motorbike, or something as similarly revelatory, can do that. So yeah, you need an access point of some kind to make people aware that art does talk to me. And yeah, humor does work for that. That's what I was trying to say. So cool.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Becky Whelan has a question about permission and permission in public space, I guess is your question, Becky. Do you want to speak to it yourself, wherever you are? I can't see you on these.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, my video's not working and not very great on the old technology. I have only done a couple of real outdoor performances, and the biggest barrier I found was trying to get permission and trying to keep the ideas of what you were setting out to do, working within the restrictions. Yeah, that was that. Like, how do you approach trying to get people who give you the permission on your side, I suppose, so they can work together with you, maybe?
Vida, how would you like to answer that about permission in public space?
I presume it's tricky.
It's tricky. I mean, one question is usually with the permission, and the other question is money.
Yeah.
I mean, how to, you have to live from something, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, me personally, it has been the enthusiasm that somehow got me over these kind of struggles and made me believe that you can also learn a lot from being stopped. You know, you don't give up, but you get stronger and you learn things. But on another hand, I mean, me, myself, and my collective, we've been also doing all sorts of things without permission. It's always one possibility. It depends. The other thing that I would recommend is to get really to become an expert on the safety issues and the issues that are reasons why somebody would not permit something, because a lot of times they are right. But they see that you also understand things and that you think about safety. It's nothing wrong with safety.
100%.
They are more a kind of a trust must be built, you know. A trust must be built, and it's easier to do this on a local level. And for the financing question, because Lucy just mentioned that in the medieval times that the court fools often through humor communicated deeper and important issues and topics. Well, I believe that it would be wonderful if street artists could be somehow paid like court fools, you know. So to have a kind of basic income for artists that could play with the city and bring art in all the spheres of our everyday life, to have it not separate from, and it's not so far from reality, because there is a kind of right now, again in Brussels, there is a kind of people are speaking about this idea to have basic income for creative thinkers and for artists.
Yeah. Thank you.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Agree. Jordan, you are interested in how we develop a legacy. Would you like to speak to us on that concept, Jordan, wherever you are? Are you there? I don't know. Can anybody see Jordan? His question is, I'm interested in how we develop a legacy or a sense of permanence without relying solely on documentation. So I suppose because the nature of street arts is it reacts to the moment in time on the public space. How do we track that? And indeed, it is something that has bothered me enormously, because there isn't really much by the way of a track of the history of street arts. When you compare it with other art forms, obviously we have our little wee small Isaac's library there, but there is a lot of work to be done. Have you any thoughts about how we can do this, Vida?
Well, we've seen on the videos, I mean, artists are doing a great job documenting their interventions in public spaces, which is very helpful, like the Dominos video and so on. But on the other hand, I really believe that we shouldn't be too much concerned about this. I used to be much more concerned about this, like what will stay, you know, what. But somehow I believe that letting go of this idea that things must stay preserved in time is also really important, because to me, I really believe that it counts. If I do something for a single person that I meet on the street, it counts. And yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily be preserved.
Okay, okay. David, did you want to come in with something? David Teven. Are you still there? I don't know. 'Cause this-
Speak. Oh, there again. I'm unmuted now.
Oh, great. Hi, David.
Hi, Lucy. How are you? And hi, Vida. It's nice to see you again. And
Yeah.
thank you for your wonderful talk. I actually got a particular laugh when you introduced the urinal. Duchamp gets everywhere, even into the street art talk. So thank you for that. I just wanted to refer back to Becky's point about permissions. And for those of you who don't know, my name is David Teven. I used to run a festival, and I now work with the Arts Council as the festival advisor. And I think gatekeepers are really important, have a really important role to play in the life and of the street arts. And festivals, I think in the Arts Council policy, street arts are specifically noted as being key allies or a key contributor to the festival domain, which also includes opera and the established arts, but the festivals, the street arts bring it out into the public domain. So for independent artists working, what Vida was talking about in terms of that building those relationships with local authorities. I mean, the arts officers have a very particular role in Ireland. Those relationships are really important. The bigger organizations like Vida's organization can build that over time, and festivals can build that over time. So for street arts, for independent operators, that can be challenging, but those relationships are in place all over the country with the festivals, with the arts officers. So I urge the street artists to use those established relationships to enable. And I mean, there's nothing, as a festival maker, there's nothing more wonderful than somebody coming up to you with a mad idea that at first thought is completely impossible. And it sort of sits and it festers, and over time you go, yeah, but we can do that. And you find the way to do it. I actually saw the Brick project many years ago when I was running a festival and wanted to bring it to Clonmel. I think it's just so fabulous. So thank you for showing that to us. So,
yeah, it's actually about what I just said before about letting go the idea that things must stay over time. It teaches us how everything is changing constantly, and embracing this can be very helpful, because if you're engaged in the street art, always you get confronted by things going other way from what you have expected and changing constantly.
And permanent is not necessarily best. I learned a lot in art school about public art, and it was always sculptures for roundabouts, and difficult to go past that. It doesn't have to be there forever, at eternity. So we've kind of run over time, but I really would like to thank you all for coming. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to all your comments and questions. But I'll leave the chat box open so you can scoot through them. Thank you so much, Vida, for that inspiring presentation. I'm sure you all agree, but it's great to just hear it being articulated in that way, and to hear, you know, it coming from the heart about all of the thought process that go into making work in the public space. It's brilliant to even just talk about it. I know we'd say that maybe it should be written down and things like this, but even just articulating it is a great start to thinking about the way the work happens and how it happens and where it happens. Huge thank you to Wexford County Council and Liz Burns of the County Wexford Arts Officer, our great supporter and ally. Thank you, Liz. We really appreciate it. And of course, thank you again to the Arts Council for supporting Isaacs throughout all of our activities. And Amanda, my lovely Amanda, has posted in the link there, the link to Vida's book, which you can get in the Isaacs resource section on our website. It's free to download and it's brilliant. It's even better if you have it in physical copy, and I have some if someone is desperate to have one. And And if anybody wants to know more about ISACs or wants to join ISACs, we're posting the link to that in the chat. Just go to isacs.ie and it's very easy for future events and updates from the world of us. So thank you all for joining us and for your attention this Tuesday morning. Great rest of the week. See you.